Thank you so much for being with Bloomberg today. It's the start of the VTB Capital Conference today in Moscow. Could you tell me, for VTB, how is the third quarter going? How is the volatility in the markets, the turbulence we have seen in the past few months, how is that impacting your bank?
Well, I mean, up till now, I think VTB is feeling quite all right, in spite of the fact that, of course, we witnessed a great volatility on the stock market, particularly on financial markets. But we acknowledge the growing problems. There's less liquidity in the Russian financial sector. There is some concerns about our clients, particularly if the international environment continues to worsen. Of course, what's happening in Greece, some controversial news coming from America, and there's some information that there's a slowdown of economic growth in China, doesn't encourage very much.
Are you experiencing a cash squeeze? Do you need to borrow more through government auctions because you can't find cash anywhere else?
Well, the government started to provide some cash, and particularly Ministry of Finance provided more than 1 trillion rubles already. But the government central bank are quite prepared for this, so we don't see any problem. We saw much more severe squeeze or real squeeze in 2008, and the government central bank were quite successful in providing additional liquidity. I think liquidity in Russia as well as in America or in Europe is not very much the problem nowadays.
So it's not getting more difficult at the moment for liquidity?
Now, it is getting more difficult because to get liquidity from the market, because the international market are very difficult for Russian companies and Russian banks, because a central bank was selling dollars and thus, removing some liquidity from the market. But as I said, this is a manageable problem. I mean, the government central bank knows how to do it. The banks now have experience how to do it, so we don't expect too much problem coming from liquidity issue. I mean, the problem of the Russian economy is if the price for commodities and demand for commodities started to fall more drastically, and then our clients, our enterprises start to experience some problem if actually repaying the debt. That will be the problem for Russian banking sector, like it was in 2008. There's some reason for concerns because there is some decrease on some major commodities, but it is not as bad as we saw in 2000, and we hope it will never reach the same level as it was. We don't think that whatever we can say, second wave or third wave of crisis, we don't think that it will be so severe as it was in 2008, particularly for Russia. Russian fundamentals in the economy are quite sound. Russian basic macroeconomic figures are quite good. So we very much believe that this time Russia can do much better than 2008.
What about the capital outflows, the capital flowing out of the country? We had some new numbers just a few days ago, $49 billion for the first 9 months of the year. That sounds like a lot, doesn't it?
Well, I think a lot of enterprises and clients, they prefer to keep their reserves or their cash in dollars because, we witnessed some kind of devaluation of ruble over the last few weeks, more devalued more than 10%. So I think that mainly explains why the corporate clients particularly prefer to keep their deposits or their cash money in dollars. I think when the situation stabilizes, I think the situation will improve.
Are you worried about the fall of more depreciation of the ruble? Do you think the central bank should do?
I don't. I think devaluation is always have a good impact as a bad one. So from this point of view, the economy is gaining, particularly export-oriented economy is gaining from this. So, but on the other hand, of course, some negative effect on foreign investors, on sometime on the population. So I think the devaluation in a limited scale is not a very big threat for the economy. But of course, as you know, the central bank is monitoring the situation, and that's why it actually sells dollars now to keep this process under control.
How is let's come back a tiny bit on the European debt crisis and how it's impacting your bank and Russia. What is the effect, and what advice would you give to Greece, since Russia has experienced default in 1998?
Well, first of all, Russian banking sector has no direct exposure to Greece or Italy or Portugal or other European bonds, sovereign bonds or corporate bonds. I read in today's newspaper that there is some big portfolio, but I never heard about this. Definitely,
but Europe
VTB
is the main trading partner of Russia.
Yeah, but VTB definitely has no, and I don't think that many Russian banks have any large positions on this. So there's no direct effect. But of course, I mean, the European debt crisis today in a position to destabilize the whole world economy. I mean, the Americans are watching very careful, the Chinese are watching very careful. So from this point of view, as it can worsen substantially the global economic outlook, that will definitely might affect Russia. For Greece, I think there's one advice which Russian government was following for many years, is to save more, to spend less. I think that's the only medicine remedy you can advise.
At the moment, the Russian government holds around 75% of VTB. By when do you think they plan to go down to 50% plus one?
It very much depends on the market. There's no ideological restrictions for this. But according to the plan we have, we are planning to sell another 10% next year, and we will be focusing on it. I think we can still be very much on time schedule for this.
Bank of Moscow, are you managing to absorb the bad loans of Bank of Moscow? How is that working out?
Absolutely. Last week we received the 10-year loan from the agency for from the agency of saving assurances or whatever. I mean, but the final, of course, lender was the initial lender was Central Bank of Russian Federation, and that's for almost 300 billion rubles. And that will help us to cover what we call the black hole of Bank of Moscow. So we are quite comfortable now. In addition, it provides us with additional liquidity today. So we very much believe that this is a sad story with a happy end, and the Bank of Moscow will play an important role among the VTB group, and there'll be a strong franchise in Moscow and in other parts of Russia.
By when do you plan to have 100%?
Well, I think we might have. We still. I mean, according to our agreement, we have to make a new emission of shares to buy for up to 100 billion rubles till the end of next year. But our plans are to make it earlier, maybe as early as the end of this year.
Great. And finally, how do you see the return of Mr. Putin at the presidency? How is that going to change, business in Russia?
Well, you can ask Mr. Putin today during the conference, but I think it's on one hand shows that there is definitely signs of stability in Russian political life, which should encourage investors. I mean, Mr. Putin is well known. Under his leadership, Russia always was conducting a very liberal economic policy. So I think it's a good sign. I think the combination of Mr. Putin and Mr. Medvedev makes this even more likely as a successful tandem, working in the new conditions. So I think it's a very, very good decision for Russia.